Hi, I'm Victor Kim, and welcome to our midweek meditations. This summer, we've been doing a series of meditations on gardens and mountains, and this week I want to talk about one of those mountains. A couple of weeks ago, I was on holidays, and I took some time and went back to Calgary, where I spent most of my life. And during one of those days that I was there, my family and I went golfing in the mountains in a place called Kananaskis. And a typical Calgary summer day, it went from being very warm to being very cold all of a sudden. And over the mountains came this bit of a squall. And once the squall passed, the skies turned bright blue again, and there was this beautiful rainbow, a beautiful rainbow. And I've got a picture of my wife Sophie on the golf course with that beautiful rainbow in the background. You can see that now. And it got me thinking about what I wanted to talk about when I returned for one of our midweek meditations. Do you know a place called Ararat? Ararat's the name of a mountain, and it's located in Turkey. Now, Ararat's not just a mountain, it's a mountain range. And you might be thinking, well, so what? Well, some of you might know that Mount Ararat, or at least the Ararat Mountains, is the place where the book of Genesis tells us that Noah's Ark came to rest after the waters of the flood receded. Now, that story has led to all sorts of wild speculation over the centuries, right? Stories of the remains of the ark being spotted somewhere on Mount Ararat, and even the tales that you could see this outline of a large ark on the side of the mountain. Of course, none of this is verifiable, none of it's true, and really it doesn't really matter what we can verify about that story. There's really no physical evidence that would have us tell us that Noah's Ark is somewhere, or the remnants of Noah's Ark is somewhere on that mountain or in that range of mountains. But I don't think the story of Noah's Ark is supposed to focus on the ark or where that ark came to rest. So let's just forget about that. The story really isn't about the ark, the boat, or even really the flood. The story is really about God and about us. There's two ways that this story often gets told. One is told as the story of Noah's Ark, right, which is kind of a children's story. And you've all seen this, pictures of the ark with all the animals on it. You've got Noah, Mrs. Noah, Noah's family, and maybe off in the background you've got a lovely little rainbow. And it's put on nursery walls, and kids are told the story of Noah's Ark. Then there's the other story, which is the story of the flood. And this is definitely not a children's story. It's not a story suitable for painting on a nursery, because in this story there's an angry God, a really, really angry God, who was determined in his anger to drown every human life, and in fact all of creation, with a cataclysmic flood, because he's so angry about our sin, about our disobedience, about our wickedness, our evil. But I think both of those extremes are off the point, right? The point of the story is really about God's sadness and God's grief at the state of human sin and human brokenness. And it grieves him, that brokenness and that sin grieves God to such a point that he pretty much decides to give up on his creation. But then in Noah, he finds a glimmer of hope. And he saves Noah and saves Noah's family. But the core of the story, no matter how literally you take it or no matter how figuratively you take it, the core of the story is that God remembers. God remembers, right? When the waters are raging upon the earth and the ark is bobbing and Noah, his family, and the inhabitants of the ark are stranded, God remembers. God remembers. And God remembers Noah, and God remembers the goodness of God's creation. And then the ark comes to rest, whether it's on Mount Ararat or wherever. Noah and his family, all of the animals, come down from the mountain. And there, down from that mountain, God makes a covenant with Noah. God makes a covenant with Noah and with all of creation that God will never again destroy. And with the sign of a rainbow, which is actually the hunter's bow without the string, right? In the sign of the rainbow, the unstrung bow, God says, I will never destroy again. No matter how off course we go, I will never destroy again. I'll find another way. God remembered Noah. And the good news is that God remembers us. God remembers us. You know, part of the tragedy of the pandemic has been the loss of so many seniors in care homes. And there's so much grief about this because I think we recognize that seniors are some of the most vulnerable people who are also some of the people who are most apt to be forgotten in those care centers. I visited with my former boss, the lead minister of the church where I first began my ministry back during my holidays a couple of weeks ago. And he was in one of these care centers. When I first started ministry, he was the most vibrant, most vigorous, most vital minister that I'd ever known. But that was, almost 30 years ago. And in recent years, his health, his physical health, and his cognitive capacity have diminished. It's natural. We get older, and these things happen to us. I spent an hour with him during my last visit, and it was a difficult hour. He had considerably slowed in movement and also in communication, but it was important for me to be there, and it was important for him to know that he would not be forgotten, that he would be remembered. He is by his family remembered. He is by me, and I know that he is remembered still right now by the countless numbers of people that his ministry has so impacted over many, many years. But most importantly, he knows that he is remembered by God. He's remembered by God, the very same God who remembered Noah. Friends, we need to know you are remembered by God. Don't forget it. You are remembered by God. Don't forget it. Doesn't matter what you're going through in life right now. You might seem like you're overwhelmed by a flood of bad news, a flood of suffering, sadness, grief, uncertainty. But you need to know that you are not forgotten by God. The God who loves you so much that in Jesus, in his loving decision to take upon our burden upon himself, even to the point of death on the cross, that in Jesus, God has made an eternal promise to you, to me, to all of us. We are remembered. We are remembered by God. We are not forgotten. And I think there's no more hope that is more critical than that we are remembered by our Creator, by the God of all creation, by the God of all life. Every time you see a rainbow, remember that God remembers. Remember that God remembers. That God remembers you, that God remembers me, that God remembers all of creation. God in Jesus Christ has found a way never again to destroy, but to redeem, renew, and restore creation, you and me, to what has been intended from the very, very beginning. God remembers. Don't forget it. Thanks be to God. Amen. Friends, I want to say a little prayer, and then we'll listen to a beautiful meditation by Jenny Berdetti, our music director. She's playing The Swan, which is one of my favorites. So before we listen to Jenny, let's just say a little prayer. Gracious God, thank you that you remember. You remembered Noah. You remember us. You never forget. And this is the source of our great hope, that we are remembered by you, that you love us, that you seek never to destroy, but to renew, redeem, and restore. Thank you for that promise. Thank you for that hope. This week, help us to live as a remembered people, also remembering others, serving others in the love that we have from you. This we ask in your name. Amen. Friends, it's good to be with you again. Enjoy the musical meditation, and we'll see you soon. Take care.